that we added the facility now meet flow control. And then now we're able to meet that 100% infiltration target with the facility as well. So this is the basic contact information that for if you want to talk to Ecology directly, but Clear Creek Solutions manages WWHM 2012. We take a lot of the comments and questions people have about the software. If you're experiencing a specific bug or you have a clarification question that you need on the software, that's a great place to contact any of us there on Clear Creek Solutions. You can also fill out a contact form. And now we will go into, I want to make sure everyone's questions were addressed. In the modeling, we seem to have a lot of questions there. Joe answered some in the chat as well. So I want to make sure I get to everyone's here in the chat because people probably have quite a few questions. So let me go through, make sure I didn't miss anyone's theirs. Also, there seems to be a lot of people. So I don't know who wants to ask a question verbally as well, if they might be able to articulate their question better that way. But go ahead, I guess you could raise your hand and then we can allow you to speak if you wanted to ask a question that way as well, as I look through the chat. So let me see if anyone is raising their hand or has a question. If you want to learn more about the models, the elements we use today, the Principal Hydrostore elements, you can go to, there's a QR code there. There's a contact information there if you want to learn more about the Hydrostore element and get a customized lunch and learn for you. So doesn't seem to be anyone raising their hand or who wants to ask a question. So, okay, what versions are available for purchase and what versions are free for downloading from the DOE website? We had a question there. Are you referring to WWHM 2012? WWHM 2012 is free, so there's no purchase version for that. It's provided. Someone asked, what is the difference between the beta version and what is on Ecology's website? So this version, the beta version allows us to make changes quickly to the software because there's sort of more time for review and things when Ecology releases their version parallel as well. We want to get a version to users that will either include new elements or include certain bug fixes or things like that. So that's the difference. There's no major differences, but it just allows us to get a more updated version to users quicker. Someone asked, is the pre-developed total basin area always equal to the mitigated total basin area? And I would say 99.9% of cases, yes, because the project areas should be the same. Even if we're using bypass areas or we're using something else, those areas should total to be the same. Are commercial elements no charge? In terms of adding the commercial elements to your software, yes, they're no charge. So you just go to our website and you're able to add them there. I kind of outlined before. If you go to downloads, there's how to add commercial elements. And then there's a video instructing you on how to do it. And there's an article there outlining how to add them. So yes, it's free.
I'm going to answer the question on the infiltration.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so the last 0.1% or sometimes 1% to get to 100% infiltration can increase the size of your facility quite a bit. And basically what it is it's trying to infiltrate the largest event on record. And sometimes that's a really big event and can expand the size of your facility quite a bit. Rainfall intensity factored. Rainfall intensity, it's historical data. It's the real data that has occurred for the last 60 years. So whatever was measured, that's the intensity.
Excellent.
Yeah. In terms of the chamber product being approved by ODOT or WashDOT, I don't actually know the answer to that particular question. I'm sure Hydrostore, if you contact them directly, can tell you. Yeah. So.
Yeah, we're just
well, Seattle has 158-year 5-minute time step time series that they mandate we use. And that slows everything down quite a bit. Now with that, they also use a different flow frequency methodology than the standard DOE methodology of log Pearson.
Let's see. Someone says the HSPF updates are sometimes printed in the PDF and other times not. Are PDF printing issues being worked on? The
So the
HSPF.
latest version, there's been a number of issues addressed in the PDF report that are in the version that you download as a beta, but are not officially uploaded to the DOE yet. We're working with DOE because we're also working to upload a brand new version for them based on the new 2024 manual. So there's been some delay in some of the fixes that have been for DOE.
So someone asked, is the rock above and below the chambers included as storage?
Yes, it is.
So someone after the reporting, there's some people asking questions about reporting, I guess. There.
Yeah, so outflow one is always the structure. Two is infiltration. There are a couple elements where you want to route infiltration downstream. They're water quality elements that all they're doing is filtering. But for nearly all of them, outflow one is the only thing you want to use to meet. And that's by default what is selected whenever you connect to a point of compliance. So
someone else, is there a 100-year rainfall event in the rainfall record?
If you study each record for each location and each scaling factor, once in a while there are some events that come out to be equal to or greater than what is computed to be the 100-year volume. But for the most part, and since there's less than 100 years of data, there's not likely to be a 100-year event in there. It just depends on from gauge to gauge, location to location, and scaling factor to scaling factor on whether or not that's the case. What you have is the actual data, and then we do a flow frequency analysis to determine your target flows, and then you have to duration match for those targets, and you're only matching to a 50-year anyways. So the 100 years not something you're even required to match.
So someone commented, meeting flow control requirements does not necessarily mean 100% infiltration.
No, because you're only required to infiltrate, whatever it can vary on every jurisdiction. But if you infiltrate 100%, you will meet flow control because there'll be no discharge. If you infiltrate less than that, you're allowed to have a discharge, but it can be very difficult to meet if your pre-developed land use type is an AB or an outwash. Then that's why you have to infiltrate. So you can have a partial infiltration solution as long as you still meet flow control.
Someone commented, I thought this would be good. AB forest has an infiltration default rate of 2 in the soil parameters. C forest has a rate of 0.08, and sap forest has a rate of 2. Are those soil parameters inches per hour, and should you edit them to match field?
No. So those are HSPF calibrated parameters, and the 2 that is there for AB soil, for example, does not mean 2 inches per hour. It's actually an infiltration index that's part of a series of algorithms that actually determine infiltration based on the previous time step and the future time step and the rainfall that's falling and the tracking of the soil moisture over time. That's why HSPF is used, is because it tracks all of the different soil moisture parameters from time step to time step. And so your infiltration rate will increase and decrease based on a whole bunch of other factors. So you should never change those parameters unless specified by the jurisdiction. Otherwise, you should just leave them.
Will the option to reduce freeboard to 0.5 feet in lieu of the forced 1 foot when utilizing auto tank become available?
Right now, there's no plans to change the default freeboard for auto tank. If you size something and you get done and you're allowed to use a 1/2 foot of freeboard, then you design it to have a 1/2 foot of freeboard. I mean, freeboard is freeboard, right? It's just on the top. So auto size uses 1 for a whole number of reasons, but that's just the default it has.
Then can you provide us tips on how to meet minimum requirements 7 and 8 if it is not feasible to meet both? Do jurisdictions prefer meeting minimum requirement number 8 over minimum requirement number 7?
This has changed from jurisdiction to jurisdiction on which one they determine is the most important. Most often, they choose the wetland protection criteria over the flotation, but I've had both. So that really, when you enter into that catch-22, where you have two different criteria that are not necessarily complementary, that you have to meet, you need to work that out with the jurisdiction that that is regulating you.
Okay, good. Is there guidance on the hydrologic inputs, specifically on accounting for effective impervious area versus total impervious?
In the case of design, when you're doing a development, there is no effective impervious area factor. That's a factor that's used when doing watershed design or calibrations or a whole bunch of other things. But DOE, Department of Ecology, requires that you use your actual impervious area.
So someone asked, is it possible to adjust riser height with the Principal Hydrostore element, rock above or below? Sorry, the thing is blocking. To be included in detention volume depends on the option to adjust height of the riser.
So the riser height is, when you do the auto sizing, is set. And if there's more rock above it, then there's more rock above it. It's all part of the stage area storage discharge table. You can manually make adjustments to your riser height afterwards, wherever you want to put it. There are too many different permutations of things to include every option in auto sizing. So that's the way that is.
So someone has stated that the 2019 Ecology Manual actually states that minimum requirement 8 is the priority. That's probably accurate, but also jurisdictions sometimes have different recommendations, I should say. Check with your jurisdiction. Let's see here. I just want to make sure we're addressing everyone's questions. Can you explain the use of linear developed basins, e.g., run sidewalks into grass strips? Oh, so like lateral basins, right? Would that what you're referring to? Yeah, so essentially you can run different lateral basins into each other with different lengths, use them as dispersions. I guess I need a more detailed question, but yeah, you can use lateral basins for that.
The permeable pavement pro element is specifically an element to mimic permeable pavement. When it does that, it creates a porous pavement implant or that shows up in your basin, but you're not allowed to use that, and you shouldn't use that because that's just part of the permeable pavement element. Each permeable pavement element you use creates a new porous pavement implant. So you should not use the one in the basin. I don't think you're even allowed to, but you should definitely just use the porous pavement element.
With a detention pond, is it okay for the riser to be lower than the design water surface 50 year, as long as the pond meets flow control standards per
Yes.
WWM results?
Simply yes. If it meets the flow duration, you're fine.
Okay, good. Those are all great questions. Hopefully we're addressing everyone.
So
a lot here.
Auto vault, and auto pond and all the autos, they do not limit the notch width or orifice size, even though it goes below that which is allowed. And it doesn't do that because once you limit it, you limit its ability to find better or more efficient solutions. And it'll often stop way before it should because it couldn't change that. When you get all done, you're an engineer. If you decide that's too narrow, you switch your design or you try and make a fatter width notch design, maybe that's shorter. and not as long, work. That's up to you to make an adjustment with. Orifice you let, and you might end up with a 2/10 of an inch orifice, which is below the 5/10 you're allowed. And DOE just says that's fine, design it according to that 2/10 of an inch. But then when you put that orifice in, put it in at 1/2 inch. That's just what they do.
This is a good one here. Any thoughts on how to best model turf fields?
So turf fields usually have gravel and an underdrain. Sometimes they infiltrate, but most of the time it's gravel with an underdrain. So really what you have with a turf field is a giant porous pavement. Okay. And so you can model it as a porous pavement element, and just make sure you set your depths correctly for each of the different layers.
When is new impervious considered not effective impervious, and how can you model that related to lateral basins?
So if you have a rooftop that drains onto a yard, now you're doing dispersion, right? And if you're doing dispersion, then you're allowed, according to the manual, to either model it directly or use certain credits with the dispersion, as long as you have the minimum length flow path. So that's how you would deal with that. Otherwise, impervious is always effective.
Okay. So does permeable pavement have to be modeled as a lateral basin versus infiltration trench per LID PSAY?
So permeable pavement have to be modeled as a lateral basin versus infiltration trench. So permeable pavement, the element, is actually it's two elements put together that you don't see. The top one is a lateral impervious element that's connected to the gravel trench bed. And so that's what it is. And so it's already modeled as a lateral basin automatically.
They stated that PSAT recommends infiltration trench. So, but
yeah, an infiltration trench, like I just mentioned, is one of the two elements of porous pavement, permeable pavement. So, modeling it as a gravel trench and modeling as a permeable pavement, in essence, are the same thing. So it just depends on, if you do model it as a gravel trench, then you have to make sure that you include the area for that as an impervious entry in your basin that connects to it, which then gives you the equivalent of permeable pavement.
So does WWHM generate a report that consultants can use as a deliverable for the AHJ, or do results usually get coupled with a storm report?
Results usually get coupled with a storm report. It's usually an attachment or an appendix or something like that, most typically.
If you asked a question earlier and there were so many I didn't get to it, you can go ahead and put it again if you'd like, but I think gotten to almost everyone. What I noticed is that there's no depth available with lateral pavement. Sorry, it's blocking your chat. With lateral pavement versus the trench, is that what you said?
So lateral, if you use
versus the trench.
If you use the if you're talking about a lateral pavement element, that's different. Lateral flow impervious is different than using permeable pavement. With permeable pavement, you have thicknesses for each layer. With lateral impervious, that's just a lateral impervious surface. There's no trench associated with that.
I just want to clarify, because someone asked about the chamber product and its approval. Someone say that it does not appear that WashDOT nor ODOT have requirements for retention detention chamber approval. If needed, we'd recommend using ASTM 2418. So that's clarity on that. We have a lot of questions about using pumps. Pumps are very, very complicated and very difficult because HSPF and therefore WWHM is not a hydraulics model. And it's possible to do. It can be included. It's very complicated.
and once in a while we'll help somebody. They'll contact us and we'll help them do it. But yeah, it's difficult to include pumps. There's a simple way to include a pump. If you just accept that you have a pump curve that is stage discharge related, then you use the SSD table to represent the pump, and you can use multiple columns to represent individual pumps or when a pump turns on or turns off. That's the short answer on that.
So someone said, I've noticed that after multiple runs of the mitigated scenario, when I'm altering the parameters of the storm solutions, the analysis results can tend to get skewed. I tend typically have to restart the program, re-input my basin values before continuing.
So I would need to see an actual example of what you're talking about. I'm not sure what parameters you're adjusting in that particular case that is causing it to get, skewed. But I can assure you, I've run thousands of different projects hundreds of times, and I've not had that particular scenario. So I'd like to know what you're doing to reach that problem.
Yeah, if you're having a particular error or you think something's wrong with something, the best way is to contact us and provide us with the .whm file, because then we can take a look at the project directly. So you can contact us at clearcreeksolutions.com/contact and go ahead and begin talking with us, and we can help you with that. We'll probably have time for 3 or 4 more questions. The PDF print defaults to log Pearson in lieu of Green-Gorton. Is that the altered result? If that's the altered results.
So other than, I think, Seattle, and I might be wrong because I'm not contacted by every jurisdiction in Western Washington on a regular basis to inform me of changes they've made to their manuals. But Seattle's the only one I'm aware of that Green-Gorton's used. But the rest of it is ecology requires log Pearson. So that's what's default used, and that's what will show up in the report. That's what you're using. There's been an adjustment made to the report in the beta version for dealing with Seattle so that it'll report Gringerton in the Seattle area. Most of the time those changes happen and we don't even know they've happened until someone tells us. And then we're not really even paid to make those updates. So it's something we just end up doing for free, but it'd be nice if we were notified and were able to make the changes they wanted.
Someone asked, can runoff from up basin be accounted for, or is it just the rain falling on the specific site?
I'm not sure what up basin means. You can account for
upstream. Is it?
You can put upstream basins. You can have anything connected to pretty much anything in the model.
So I think maybe I understand this question now. So all the basin area, we're basically determining in the model that rain is falling on the entire basin area. So if you have 3 acres of forest flat, it's all treated the same, and the rain is falling on that amount of area. Hopefully that makes sense. Makes sense. Okay, great. Yeah, and if anyone has, because it looks like we're getting close to wrapping up, we want to be conscious of people's time. If anyone has a follow-up question, go ahead. I would contact me at brashfordjr@clearcreeksolutions.com. If you had a comment or email or something, your question didn't get answered, whatever happened, just go ahead and email me there, and we can start a correspondence there. So we just want to give people as much clarity as possible on these topics, because sometimes they can be complicated. So a lot of people thought it was helpful. Great. I'm glad it was helpful. Again, I'll mention this will all be reposted. You'll be able to watch this in the future. We'll send out an email with it there. It'll be on our YouTube channel, so people will be able to view it for all eternity and help with their stormwater. So we want to thank you, everyone. We can probably maybe take one more question, but it looks like we're wrapping up. A lot of people, thank you. Absolutely. Thank everyone for attending. We want to thank you guys as well. So because this helps us determine what people are struggling with, what people are thinking about, and how we can address and make things better for the next version. So anyways, I'll stick around for a few more minutes, but that was what we had planned for today. Hopefully everyone has a good afternoon. Thank you for Joe for popping on as well and answering some questions for us. So Thank you everyone. Hope everyone has a good afternoon. So like I said, at this point, if your question didn't get answered or your comment didn't get answered, go ahead, just email me and we'll start a correspondence there. So